Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Speak Smart podcast. Today, we're going to be diving deep into personal growth and specifically this idea of letting go of things that no longer serve us. We're going to be looking at this really powerful and motivational speech and kind of unpacking some of its wisdom about personal empowerment and self-discovery.
It's really interesting how this speech frames personal growth. We tend to think of it as adding things to our lives, learning new skills, having new experiences. But this speech is more about subtraction, taking away the things that are holding us back.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, letting go. This speech uses this really vivid image. It talks about carrying a backpack full of rocks to kind of represent the burden of negativity that we sometimes lug around with us. And it made me think about all the different rocks we carry. Maybe it's a job that just drains you, or a relationship that leaves you feeling empty, or even, just that inner critic in your head that never seems to shut up. Have you ever felt that way?
Well,
weighed down?
Absolutely, yeah. It's such a universal experience to feel like you're carrying all this baggage, all these things you can't seem to let go of. It's like we get so used to the weight that we forget it's even there. And the speech is pretty honest about it. Letting go is hard. It's especially tough when it's people we've loved, people we've invested time and energy in.
That's so true. And it makes me think about, times in my own life where I've clung to relationships that weren't really healthy for me. It's like a part of me knew I needed to let go, but there was this other part that was just terrified of what would happen if I did.
The source material really addresses that fear, that we tend to find comfort in what's familiar, even if it's not actually good for us. We cling to what we know, even if it's holding us back from something better. What's important is recognizing that clinging to those rocks ultimately prevents us from moving forward.
That makes me think about another really important idea from the speech, and that's the power of solitude. I think a lot of people are afraid of being alone, but this speech really reframes solitude as a positive thing, like a time for self-discovery and growth.
What's interesting is how the speech makes a distinction between being alone and being lonely. It argues that solitude is not about isolation. It's about consciously creating space for yourself, space to connect with yourself, to really understand your own needs, your values, your aspirations.
I love this idea of solitude as a source of strength. There's this great quote from the speech that says there's power in solitude, there's strength in being alone. And it makes me think about how, when we're constantly surrounded by noise or by other people's energy, it's really hard to hear our own inner voice.
It's like trying to have a conversation in a really crowded room. You might hear words, but you're not really listening, You're not really absorbing what's being said. Solitude gives you that quiet space you need for deeper reflection and connection with yourself.
That makes so much sense. The speech is suggesting that embracing solitude is kind of like building a strong foundation for yourself, so you're not relying on other people for your validation or your happiness. But isn't there a risk of, becoming isolated if we spend too much time alone?
It's a good question, and it gets to a common misconception about solitude. It's not about shutting yourself off from the world. It's about consciously choosing to spend time alone for self-reflection and growth. And when you're really secure in yourself, when you're content with your own company, your energy changes. You stop seeking approval from others, and you start to radiate a sense of self-assurance, which naturally draws the right people and opportunities towards you.
So it's not about becoming a hermit. It's about intentionally carving out that time for yourself. It's like hitting the pause button on the external world so you can tune into your own inner world. That's a powerful shift in perspective. But let's get a little more concrete here. How does the speech help us identify those rocks in our backpacks, the things we need to let go of?
The speech offers some really powerful examples. It talks about toxic relationships, people who drain you, people who discourage you, people who just don't believe in you. They're kind of like energy vampires, these people who leave you feeling depleted and doubting yourself.
Right. Those are the people who, you walk away from feeling worse than when you started talking to them, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really hard to see those patterns, especially if you've been in a certain relationship for a long time.
Exactly. It can be really difficult to recognize toxic dynamics when you've become so used to them. That's why this speech encourages us to pay attention to how we feel around certain people. Do they lift you up? Or did they bring you down? Do you feel energized after spending time with them? Or totally drained? If you're always feeling anxious or like you're walking on eggshells around someone, that's a sign that something might be off.
It's a really simple but powerful question to ask yourself. And what happens if you realize, okay, some of my relationships kind of fit that description? The speech is pretty clear that letting go of those relationships isn't selfish. It's actually necessary for your own growth. But how do you actually do that? Especially when it involves people that you care about.
That's where boundaries come in. The speech talks about the importance of protecting your energy and your well-being. And sometimes that means setting boundaries. It's not necessarily about cutting people out of your life entirely, but it is about creating space for yourself, honoring your own needs. Sometimes that means saying no more often, or maybe limiting your exposure to people who consistently drain you.
It's like saying no to protect your own energy, your own cup from being emptied, right? You can't pour from an empty cup. And self-care becomes really important in this process of letting go, making sure you're replenishing your own energy so you can show up as the best version of yourself.
That's such a good point. Self-care isn't selfish, it's essential. And when we prioritize our own needs, we actually have more to give to others in a way that's healthy and sustainable.
One of the things that really resonated with me from the speech was this idea of not needing anyone to complete you. It's a bold statement, but it made me think about how, we're often conditioned to believe that we need another person to make us whole, to make us happy. And I think that can lead to some really unhealthy patterns,
Absolutely. The whole "you complete me" thing might sound romantic in the movies, but in real life, it can be a recipe for disappointment. This speech is really encouraging us to cultivate a sense of wholeness within ourselves so we're not constantly looking to other people to fill a void.
That's such an important shift in perspective, isn't it? It's about recognizing and embracing your inherent worth, no matter your relationship status, no matter what anyone else thinks of you. And when you really believe that you are enough, just as you are, you stop needing that validation from other people. You attract people who appreciate you for who you are, not for what you can do for them.
Exactly. It's about shifting from a place of lack to a place of abundance, from seeking external validation to cultivating internal validation. And when you make that shift, your relationships change. You no longer tolerate disrespect, manipulation, any kind of negativity.
It's like you're no longer settling for crumbs because you deserve the whole loaf.
Right. And that leads us to another big step in this process of letting go, and that's forgiveness. Something the speech emphasizes as being really essential. Forgiveness is such a powerful concept, and the speech talks about both forgiving others and maybe even more importantly, forgiving ourselves. It makes a really key point. Forgiving someone doesn't mean you're condoning their actions. It's about freeing yourself from the past. It's about letting go of the resentment and the anger, the bitterness that keeps you tethered to that experience.
I love how the speech compares holding on to anger to carrying a backpack full of rocks. Like it literally weighs you down and prevents you from moving forward. It's such a great image.
It is, and that weight can manifest in so many ways, physically, emotionally, even spiritually. Forgiveness is about setting that backpack down and finally being able to move freely again. It's about reclaiming your power and choosing peace over resentment. But maybe the most challenging part, the most crucial part, is actually forgiving ourselves.
That's something I personally struggle with, and I know a lot of our listeners do too. We're often our own worst critics, aren't we? We replay those past mistakes in our minds over and over and carry around all this guilt and shame.
We do. But the speech reminds us that we were doing the best we could with the information we had at the time. And now, with the benefit of hindsight, with all the learning and growing we've done since then, it's time to offer ourselves that same compassion and forgiveness that we so readily extend to others.
It's about recognizing that we are all works in progress, right? That we're all on this journey of learning and evolving. And mistakes are an inevitable part of that process.
Absolutely. And when we release that self-judgment, we create space for self-acceptance and self-love, which are essential foundations for personal growth and for genuine, lasting happiness.
I think this is a great place to pause for now and let these ideas sink in a little bit. I'm curious, what stands out to you about this whole idea of letting go so far? We'll be back in the next part to dig a little deeper into how embracing your worth and letting go of negativity can actually lead to attracting positive relationships and opportunities into your life. Until then, take some time to reflect on what you might be ready to release, what you might want to start taking out of that backpack of yours.
It's fascinating how this speech connects letting go with attracting positivity into our lives. It's not just about getting rid of the bad stuff, but making room for the good.
Right. It reminds me of that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. Sometimes you have to fill yourself up first before you can really give to others. And part of that is letting go of what drains you, so you have space for the things that nourish you.
That's such a great way to put it. When we let go of negativity, whether it's those toxic relationships we talked about, or limiting beliefs, or even past hurts, We create space for new possibilities to come in.
It's like when you finally clean out a super cluttered room. Suddenly you can breathe again, you can see clearly, and you have all this space to create something new and beautiful.
I love that analogy. That's exactly what happens when we let go in our own lives. We become open to new relationships, new opportunities, new experiences that are more aligned with who we truly are.
Okay, so how does that actually work? How does letting go lead to attracting the right people and opportunities?
The speech really emphasizes self-confidence and authenticity. When you let go of that need for external validation, you start trusting your own instincts, your own judgment. You become more comfortable with yourself, flaws and all.
And that authenticity really shines through, doesn't it? I've always been drawn to people who are genuine, who are comfortable in their own skin. It's like they're saying, this is me, take it or leave it.
Exactly. And it's not to say that we shouldn't strive for self-improvement, but we should be approaching it from a place of self-love and acceptance, not from a place of lack or insecurity.
Right. It's about recognizing that you are already worthy. And any growth is just enhancing that inherent worth, not trying to create it from scratch.
Absolutely. And when you operate from that mindset, you stop chasing things, you stop chasing people, and they're actually drawn to you more effortlessly. It's like you're sending out this clear signal to the universe about what you're looking for, and the universe responds accordingly.
Like tuning into the right frequency, maybe. When you're vibrating at a higher level, you attract people and experiences that match that energy.
Precisely. And the speech emphasizes that this isn't some mystical woo-woo concept. It's about the energy you project. When you're confident, when you're authentic, when you're at peace with yourself, you naturally attract people who resonate with those qualities.
So it's not about forcing things to happen. It's about aligning yourself with what you desire by becoming the best version of yourself.
Exactly. And that brings us back to a really important point that the speech makes. You don't need anyone to complete you. You are already whole and complete on your own.
I think we hear that a lot these days, but it's so easy to fall into that trap of thinking that we need a partner or a certain number of friends to be truly happy. It's like we're constantly bombarded with messages that say we're not enough unless we're in a relationship or surrounded by people.
You're right. But this speech is challenging that whole notion. It's suggesting that real happiness comes from within, from a deep sense of self-love and self-acceptance.
And when you have that wholeness within yourself, you're no longer desperately searching for it in other people. You become much more discerning about the people you let into your life. You attract people who are genuinely compatible with you, not just filling a void.
Exactly. And that's a game changer for relationships. Because when you know your worth, you don't tolerate disrespect. You don't tolerate negativity. You set healthy boundaries and you walk away from anything that doesn't align with your values.
It's about self-respect.
Yeah.
Not being selfish, right? Honoring your own needs and desires.
Absolutely. The speech reminds us that it's okay to say no to things that drain us, to people who don't appreciate us, to situations that compromise our peace of mind.
It's about taking ownership of our lives and making choices that are truly in our best interest. And when we do that, when we prioritize our well-being, when we live authentically, we naturally attract people and opportunities that reflect that energy.
You got it. It creates this positive feedback loop. The more we embrace our worth and let go of negativity, the more abundance and joy we experience. And that abundance isn't just about material things or even romantic relationships. It's about feeling fulfilled in all areas of your life. It's about having those meaningful connections, pursuing our passions, and living with a real sense of purpose.
So practically speaking, what are some things that we can do to start attracting more of that positivity into our lives?
Well, the speech is really big on self-reflection. It encourages us to take a hard look at our lives and identify the things that are no longer serving us. What relationships are draining you? What beliefs are holding you back? What habits are sabotaging your success?
It's like taking inventory of your backpack, deciding what you need to keep and what you can finally toss out.
Exactly. Once you've identified those things, it's about making a conscious decision to let them go. And that might mean having some difficult conversations. It might mean setting boundaries. It might even mean ending certain relationships.
It can be scary to make those changes, especially if we've been holding on to those things for a really long time.
It can be. But the speech reminds us that growth is often uncomfortable. It requires us to step outside our comfort zones, to embrace the unknown. And that's where self-trust comes in. We have to trust that letting go is ultimately for our highest good, even if it feels scary in the moment.
And, the more we practice letting go, the easier it gets. It's like building a muscle.
Yeah.
The more you use it, the stronger it becomes.
That's a great way to think about it. And as we get better at letting go, we create more space for positive people and experiences and opportunities to flow into our lives.
It's like opening a window and letting all this fresh air into a stuffy room. Suddenly, everything feels lighter and brighter, full of possibility.
Exactly. And the more we practice letting go, the more we realize it's not actually about losing something. It's about gaining something far greater. Peace of mind, freedom, a life that truly aligns with who we're meant to be.
This feels like another good place to pause and let these ideas sink in. What are you ready to let go of today? We'll be back in the final part to wrap things up and leave you with some powerful final thoughts for your journey. Welcome back. You know, as we've been talking about this whole idea of letting go, it's become pretty clear that it's not just like a one-time thing, right? It's this ongoing process that we need to be actively cultivating in our lives.
It really is. It's like weeding a garden, you know. You can pull out all the weeds that you see, but new ones are inevitably going to pop up. It's about being vigilant and consistently tending to the garden of our lives.
That's such a good analogy.
Exactly.
And it really highlights the importance of self-awareness in this whole process. We have to be mindful of our thoughts, our emotions, the energy that we're putting out into the world, because all of that influences what we attract back to us.
Exactly. It's like we're sending out a signal to the universe, and the universe responds in kind. When we're focused on negativity, lack, fear, we tend to attract more of those things. But when we shift our focus to positivity, to gratitude, to self-love, well, guess what? We start to attract more of those things instead.
And the speech is very clear that this isn't about pretending to be happy all the time or ignoring our problems. It's about consciously choosing to focus on the good, even in the midst of challenges.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we always have a choice in how we perceive things. We can dwell on the negative, or we can look for the silver lining.
And that choice, that perspective, it has a huge impact on our lives and the experiences that we attract.
Absolutely. And one really powerful way to cultivate that positive mindset is through gratitude. You know, when we take the time to focus on what we're grateful for, it shifts our whole perspective and helps us appreciate the good that's already present in our lives.
Even the small things, right? Like a warm cup of coffee, a sunny day, a kind word from a stranger. Noticing and appreciating those little moments can really make a big difference in our overall happiness.
It's like training our brains to look for the good, to focus on the abundance that already surrounds us. And when we do that, we naturally attract more of it.
The speech also talks about the importance of trusting the process. It reminds us that we can't control everything that happens, but we can control how we respond.
And sometimes letting go actually means surrendering to the unknown. It's about having faith that things will work out for the best, even if we can't see the path ahead.
It's about letting go of that need to micromanage everything and trusting that, maybe the universe has our back.
I know that can be really scary for some people. We like to feel in control, but sometimes the most amazing things happen when we let go and allow ourselves to be guided by something bigger than ourselves.
It's about having faith that even if things don't go exactly according to plan, there's a greater purpose at play, and we'll end up right where we're supposed to be.
You know, that brings up another important point, which is that we're not alone on this journey. There are people who care about us, people who want to support us, people who are going through similar challenges.
It's so easy to feel like we're the only ones struggling, but that's just not true. We all face challenges. We all have setbacks. We all have moments of self-doubt.
And that's why it's so important to connect with others, to build a support system of people who understand us, who encourage us, who remind us of our worth, especially when we're struggling to see it ourselves.
Whether it's family, friends, a therapist, a spiritual community, having that support can make a huge difference in our ability to navigate the ups and downs of life.
It's like having a team of cheerleaders on the sidelines, cheering us on, reminding us of our strength and our resilience.
And remember, you deserve that support. You deserve to be surrounded by people who love you, who believe in you, who want to see you thrive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes letting go means letting go of people who don't fit that description. It's about prioritizing our well-being and creating space for those who uplift us, who celebrate our growth.
And that brings us to a final thought-provoking question from this speech. What is one thing that you are ready to let go of today to create space for more peace, joy, and fulfillment in your life?
It's a great question to reflect on, isn't it? What are you carrying that no longer serves you? What are you holding on to that's preventing you from moving forward? What are you afraid to release, even though you know it's holding you back?
Take some time to sit with that question. And remember, letting go is a journey, not a destination. It's okay to take it one step at a time.
And as you embark on this journey, remember to be kind to yourself. Celebrate your progress, no matter how small it might seem. And trust that you are exactly where you need to be in this moment.
You are capable of amazing things. You're worthy of love, of happiness, of success. And as you let go of what no longer serves you, you create space for all of those things to flow into your life in abundance.
So go out there and embrace the power of letting go. Let go of the past. Let go of negativity. Let go of fear. And step into the greatness that awaits you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Speak Smart podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that like button. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.